if one person can do it, anyone can do it. All you got to do is just
Come on.
yeah, you got to repeat the same level of activity, right? So if someone communicates better than you, it's like, okay, it's not like, well, that's the card I'm dealt. No, it's like, okay, how do I speak better? So how do I sell better? How do I get better at personal relationships?
Today's guest has sold it all. Art, jewelry, coaching, even socks and mattresses. He's been hustling since the age of 6, slinging lemonade while his mom ran free aerobics classes outside of their building. He's never finished high school, but bought a $2,000 sales course that changed his life. Sales didn't just give him a career, it gave him a purpose, even through tragedy like losing his mom. His motto, life is sales. You're either selling or you're failing. He's learned from the best in the business, lives by structure, and believes a healthy body fuels a winning mind. Please help me welcome a street smart closer with a powerful story, Albert.
What's up?
What's up, Albert? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. This is nicely put over here.
First and foremost, what I want to start off with, dude, is I got to meet you in person for the first time, even though I think it's been over a year. I think more than a year.
About a year. Right?
About a year since
we actually connected on school about a year ago. Yeah.
Was it on school?
School, yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's to say.
Do you remember how you found Closers Network on school?
Just stumbled into Rich, got some posts, saw his posts, and we kind of changed some interactions and engagement there. And then one thing led to another, then you, and then I got segue into it. And then, I don't know, you know how it is. And we just clicked off, and that's it.
Dang.
Yeah, school. But school was the thing.
So I remember having a conversation with you about joining the agency, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even till I don't have any notes that I took or anything, but just off of memory,
right?
I remember you saying, I believe you were, if not a Rolex, a watch salesman at the time on cruise ships.
So yeah, I spent many years on ships. I actually sold fine art, which I was like, you have a little entrepreneurship there where you have people that you're responsible for. You're responsible for their pay, for the expenses of actually running the business, and you're training them as well how they can run the program, right? And then I transitioned into a very similar thing doing with the jewelry and watches, and that actually had a little bit of broader kind of casting web because I would be a shopping expert on a cruise ship. So I would be a leading authority for all shopping. And then people would come to me and then, I would tell them where to find what they need to, what they're looking for. And I would help them. And then watches and obviously diamonds and gemstones, the biggest, the highest value, that's the biggest return. And that's obviously something that need to be extra careful. So that was something that I was doing, but I was getting out of that business. So I was already a foot out the door just because my wife had some health issues. Me being in Croatia, I couldn't spend that amount of time on the ship for 2-3 months. At the time, I would obviously be away. So I was looking for another thing to do and transition into.
So you mentioned, you have to be extra careful when you are with dealing with the specific clientele that you're talking about in dealing in fine arts and in jewelry.
Absolutely.
One doesn't get there overnight, right? It takes probably a long time for you to have built up and developed and been in a position that you have been. How did you get your start and how did you end up there?
Well, actually, as a young man, and as you did mention at the introduction, I've never finished high school. I was in a lot of questionable crowds and doing questionable things that were not leading to very positive places, right? So I had to make a decision what I'm going to do with my life, whether I'm going to continue the path that others are actually going on and having similar outcomes like them, like jail or being obviously dead. So I changed and I started to do odd jobs like most people, anything that is available, right? Delivering pizza, waitering. Actually, I was pretty good as a waiter because it actually involved communication and personal relationship, which is, I think, foundation for great salesmanship, right? And then I was doing that for a while, and then I got on a cruise ship as a waiter. But this was not my, be-all, end-all kind of situation. This was my foot through the door, and I was looking for the opportunities. I was hyper vigilant to find what that I can do and transition to. And then I saw an art auctioneer, was that the art guy who's making good money, was making he said to me then he was making like $10,000 a month. I was like, okay, that's okay. I can do that. I want that. What do you do? What do I need to learn and how I'm going to get there? And then literally like day 5 on a ship, I decided this is what I'm going to do. And then I start working towards it. And then, obviously when you find out what you're missing, all the education, all the knowledge, the expertise, the communication. Obviously, being from Croatia, I had to learn how to communicate. If you want to be an art auctioneer, if you want to hold seminars, you want to communicate to people, you want to sell, you want to sound familiar, you want to sound like an expert. So you need to know how to communicate effectively. So I learned and taught myself how to speak effectively, how to lean into the vowels, articulate and enunciate, big chant and all that stuff. I'm going to need that later, but also sales as well. And I was kind of obliquely learning sales and also learning from my days in the streets, because obviously when you deconstruct it and look backward in retrospect, you can see a lot of commonalities. Because obviously, again, it boils down, it boils down to communication and personal relationship. And I obviously
communication and personal relationships. That's powerful.
Yeah, because whatever we do in life, we're going to always need communication and personal relationships.
So you said you recognize you need communication and you needed to learn how to communicate
more effectively.
Yeah. Was there a moment you figured that out, and how did you start doing that?
So, well, I through most of my life, I'm self-taught. I believe education is something that never ends. So education, if you deconstruct the word, it comes from the Greek word eduko. To educe, it means to withdraw from within, right? So I realized there's a gap. The guy that I was speaking with, I believe he was Australian. He had a better vernacular, had ability to speak, to communicate. He had management skills, sales skills. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of missing a lot of that stuff, or I'm obviously not on that high level that he is. So I just, I realized I need to start closing the gap. And so I was picking things I need to get better at. And then I was just like knocking them out like dominoes.
So what I'm hearing you say is you really realize that there's a next level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you realize, okay, I got to figure out how I'm going to get to the next level.
Well, I realized, and this is something that I was always innately, I believed that, and realized later, after being educated by a lot of speakers, reading a lot of books and being through a lot of courses and being on seminars and all that stuff, that actually validated my level of thinking. But it's like, if one person can do it, anyone can do it. All you got to do is just...
Come on.
Yeah, you got to repeat the same level of activity, right? So if someone communicates better than you, it's like, okay, it's not like, well, that's the card I'm dealt. No, it's like, okay, how do I speak better?
Come on.
So how do I sell better? How do I get better at personal relationships, right? How do I get better in management? So I realized it's upon me to do this. If I want to actually get that job, get that opportunity, I had to step up. And then, you start knocking things down, and all of a sudden you look back and you're like, okay, that's easy. Oh, we go. And, I was never afraid being uncomfortable in those situations, right? Because me leaving, and I actually have to say, when I left Croatia, I had a pretty comfortable job. I was actually working in a restaurant. It was a high-end restaurant on an island where people like F1 drivers were coming, the pilots, and billionaires, big money, right? Because you can only come there with a yacht or a super yacht or a mega yacht, right? So I worked 6 months out of the year, or I had a salary over the course of full year. I was paid. Plus, I was the only one there as a waiter that had a management contract, so I get piece of the action too. Just because the owner just loved my style, I would really bring value as much as possible when I would communicate with people. I would not just go there and take an order, which a lot of salespeople, they're like order takers.
That's a valuable freaking lesson right there, man.
So I would go there to the table and I would try to understand what they need, where they're coming from, and listen, let me recommend. This is the fish. This is what you want. Because here's the thing, and I truly believe that then, and I believe it right now. If someone comes on a $200 million yacht and you just let them decide what they're going to eat, they might miss out on a high level experience. And let me tell you what I think you should eat. what you should
There's
drink.
so much power in what you're dropping.
Right. And then, it was comfortable for me. And I'm like, but I knew that this is not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. So I'm like, you know what? I need to get myself out of comfort zone, out of familiarity, right? And then so I went to the ship and into something completely unknown, something uncomfortable. And then while I was there, might as well, if I'm uncomfortable, I can up the ante and get more uncomfortable, right? Because obviously, the more uncomfortable you get, the bigger the reward.
That's right. And there's a lot to unpack there. I love what you said because it's a mindset, and I'm blessed to have a father figure that helped me understand this very early on. But my dad pulled me to the side when I was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, 11, 12 years old, and he told me that if somebody can do something, you can do it because they don't possess anything that you don't. And you said, if they can do it, that I can. Is that something that you taught yourself? Did anyone mentor you into believing that? Or did you just have that self-belief from within?
It was more like a hunger and a drive.
Hunger and a drive.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, listen, I got to close the gap. I did not accept the fact that I can't do it, right?
Did not accept the fact, man. That's it right there. You weren't okay with the standard.
No, absolutely. Because I was like, I was not, and this is the thing, and then I realized that later, listening and going through the Tony Robbins and other people, like, I did not, looking back at it, I did not negotiate with myself. Should I, would I, right? I'm like, listen, I'm doing this, and I'm putting myself on the line. I'm out there, like 10,000 miles from my home. I'm like, yes, there's no going back, right? Might as well. So, for example, when I learned to communicate or taught myself how to communicate, I commit myself, right? I will write everything on English. I would write my thoughts in English. I would write journal in English. Everything was English. So I started to think on English. I started to have dreams on English. And that helped me because I was immersed into it. But that was a decision.
And just for clarity, English is not your first language.
No, it's not.
God, bro, this guy's so profound. And did you learn English growing up, or like?
Yeah. It was something that I have a proclivity towards languages for some reason. Very early, I had ability to speak English well, and actually at school, I was really, really good at school. School was very easy for me. And that was also a problem because I didn't have to put any effort to actually get great grades. And so I would do all the other things, and then I would get into a lot of trouble, right? But English was something that I was always top 2 or 3 in the class, depending on the class, right? But still, I had to take it to the next level, right? Or 2.
Yeah. Man, I love what you're saying about getting uncomfortable to find that next level, because that's where the real growth happens, right? And most people are like, more work, more change, more this, more that. What advice would you give to someone who's stuck in their own head right now and wants to be able to take a leap in for themselves and for their life, for their family, right? All of it, but is letting fear get in the way? What advice would you give that person?
Well, focus on the reward, right? And that at the end of the day, that was all for me, right? Because I zeroed in what I'm going to get, what I'm gonna, and then obviously looking back at it, who do you have to become to be that person, right? Who do you have to become to get the job, to start the business, to get the sale, to make the money, so that growth. But I focused solely on that. I was not really thinking, can I, should I, is this going to cost money? What if I fail? Because I literally couldn't see it. Just because
you were single-minded focus on the goal.
Focus. I was like obsessed.
You know what? I literally just talked about this with Susan. She was here before this, but we were talking about, like, are you in alignment with the person that you want to be? Or are you just telling yourself that you are, right? Are you doing the necessary actions? Are you putting in the time and getting better? Are you doing all the work that it takes to get to that next level? Or are you just pretending you are?
Well, the thing is, people verbalize things, and that's the thing, goal setting and all that stuff. It's one-on-one, like everyone that you speak, they want to be millionaire, they want to be successful, they want to have finer things and support their family. So they have very high standards, but then when they have to actually put it into action, their activity is so below that, right? So there's a tremendous gap that if you don't close the gap, it's highly unlikely if you don't have very, very much fortune and luck, right? That something happens to you. It's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to achieve all that you want, right? So people are like, yeah, I'm going to be the best in the company. I'm going to be the top of the board, right? And they're like, well, but I want to work 2 hours a day. It's not going to cut it, right?
There's a misalignment there.
Yeah, there's a dissonance, which is big.
That's huge, man. I love the fact that, I happened to graduate high school, but to be honest, I kind of sold my way through high school in the sense of I didn't have enough. I don't know if you know how the U.S. system works, but you're allocated a certain amount of what they call credits, points. Yeah,
I got you. I know.
So, hey, I'm supposed to have had 250 points to be able to graduate, and I'm like 30 points short, which is 6 classes, which is a whole nother semester,
right.
And it's like, I can't make that up. There's just no way. And so I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, my parents came here, left communist Armenia to give me a better opportunity. And I'm here right now. And if I'm not the person that could even graduate high school, I was like, this is embarrassing, dude. Like, and so I had to think differently. So I thought, I was like, well, what if I kind of could see if I could buy someone lunch or buy them coffee and see how far that could get me.
Entrepreneurial mind.
And through the grapevine, this is where I got the idea. There was a summer school teacher that I knew that people would buy him like lunch or dinner and stuff, and he would just tell them that they're in class when they're not.
So I caught wind of that. Yeah,
I caught wind of that. So I was like, and so I was going to summer school to make up some of these credits, but I was still short 25 credits. I was just making up 1 class in summer school. And so I thought about, okay, my counselor said like I can't graduate and this, that. So I was like, man, one day I want to go just talk to him. And so I bought lunch and coffee, and I took him lunch and coffee. So we talked, we chatted, trying to figure things out. Nothing happened in that meeting. I scheduled another meeting for like a month later. I walk into his office. He's like, hey, I just realized something. I'm like, oh yeah, what's that? He's like, you just ended up, I just realized that you actually have enough credits to graduate. He's like, I don't know how the credits ended up getting to where they're at. He's like, if you want, I can look into it and find out. Or if you don't want, we don't have to look into it. I was like, please don't look into it. Please don't look into it.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. And so I got blessed. I got lucky. I graduated on stage with 2 medals. Coincidentally, I wasn't supposed to graduate.
But if I can interject,
please.
I don't think it was luck, right? Here's the thing. What I hear is that you didn't accept the fact that you're not going to graduate, right? And you were embarrassed by it. And then you got into like thinking mode. What can I do?
Solution minded.
And then whatever it takes. Okay, buy lunch, ingratiate yourself, whatever it takes, and you found a way. And I think obviously when you're looking for something, this is where luck finds you, right?
Come on, Albert, you got freaking wisdom on wisdom, baby. Yeah, but all that to say, dude, I barely graduated high school. I fell out of college 2 weeks in. I was like, this isn't for me. But, there's an interesting correlation because some people think like, I need to be educated, or I need to have this PhD, I needed this. And it's like, you don't need any of that, especially in closing. You maybe need a little bit of what we call emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
Right? But you don't need a high IQ to be a great salesman, in my opinion.
Not necessarily. It doesn't hurt, right?
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt.
It's not going to hurt. But you don't and here's the thing, being book smart is nice. But obviously, again, we're going back to communication, personal relationships. You don't have to be, a rocket scientist.
No, you don't.
Right. And, I think formal education is nice to a degree. I'm not knocking that down.
Absolutely.
I respect people that do that. And especially if you want to be a brain surgeon, I don't want you to be self-taught and wing that, especially if I'm there, needing a surgery, right? Or a lawyer or something like
Absolutely.
that. But, I don't think for most things that is something that is conducive or that actually people utilize.
Yeah.
Because most people end up in a completely different sphere of life. But in sales, you don't need that. But you want to and need to have desire to be educated.
Come on.
Right?
Desire to be educated.
Right. Yeah. Because, obviously, if you know it all, if your cup is full, well, that's it. There's nothing coming into that cup anymore. So having that flexibility, having that desire and being teachable, it does help in sales, regardless where's the starting point. And sometimes actually people that are starting lower on the totem pole, quote unquote totem pole, or like less education, they have a chip on their shoulder, they don't have all that book smart. they work harder and they create a bigger momentum and they surpass the people that they have the degrees because they think that's it. Most people feel about degree, that's it, I'm done. I got the degree, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually an ongoing process that it never ends, at least not for me.
That's
right.
right.
And most people that are really, really good at certain things in their life, they never stop with educating themselves in one way or the other.
That's right. I love it because Tony Robbins talks about it. Kanai, constant and never ending improvement. That's right, my man. That's right. Speaking of self-taught and education, you invested $2,000 into a course.
Yes.
How did that change your life? I think you mentioned that had a big impact on you.
Profound impact, because here's, I was, piecing things together, amalgamating from different sources and all that stuff. And then, I actually saw an ad, Facebook or something like that. And that was like 12 years ago. That was not, it was.
Facebook was like, even Instagram was barely new that time.
Yeah. So I was like, I watched the video sales letter thing, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this, right?
Sign me up.
So I bought a $2,000 course from a guy that is well known, and a great sales trainer and a salesperson and a businessman. And I got these 10 CDs.
Is that Grant Cardone?
No, it was JB, right?
Oh, JB.
Yeah, that was my first experience. And I got like 10 CDs, DVDs that you click into it, the little cards and stuff like that, reminder cards. I carried those for years. I always had it in my man purse. Right?
Yeah.
No, it's a nice, good reminder. But here's the thing, obviously, it gave me an insight, something for me to see, open to close, how to structure it. It opened my mind of possibilities of education, but also it committed me. When I put my money on the line, like, listen, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this. And I realized, this is a way to get better faster, right? Shorten the time, collapse the time, by listening to others, what they did, so I don't have to go through 10 years of trial and error. I can just learn from someone who done it before, right? And then obviously that commitment of $2,000, which was a lot of money for me today.
Sure.
Back then, I should say, to commit that on a course. And here's the thing, and I was as I was driving here, I was thinking about this. I was reminiscing about it, and then and I've never actually thought when I was buying this whether or not it's going to work. But I listened to the presentation. I'm like, yeah, that's it. And I didn't question this, right? I'm like, I'm going to get my money's worth out of it, and I'm committing to it. And so I bought this like this. I was the easiest sale probably ever. It was like I was a laydown, right? Because I've focused on what I'm going to get out of it, and I got a lot more than I even expected that I'm going to get, right? And then that actually put me on a path of trajectory of that constant and never ending improvement, investing in myself, and obviously, putting myself on the line. But I think, paying for speed, paying for someone's time, energy that they invested into something is tremendously important.
Damn, man. I don't know if I've dropped this many freaking gems on anyone on this show, dude. You just back to back. This is crazy. So, Albert, you said something a couple times now that I think is so important to freaking cover, man. You said you were every time you invested or you had a plan, you were never focused on what the alternative of that plan could be. There was never a plan B for you. You were only focused on plan A. Plan B was never even an option, man. And I think that's what so many people fail at, man, is what if it doesn't work out? I heard you say there is no what if it doesn't work out. I'm going all in. And that mindset is so powerful, man. You're like, you knew what you wanted to get out of it, and you were sold, and you were convinced, and you were bought in like, this is exactly what I'm going to get out of it.
Absolutely.
And you did every single time, it sounds like.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, I thought I'm going to be a millionaire in 6 months, which obviously, but here's the thing, but looking back at it in retrospect, it was exactly what I needed, but I've never doubted it, right? I'm like, it made sense, and I'm like, and then when I get into it, whatever I paid for, I'm like, I'm going to go all in. And I get immersed into that, and I'm trying to extrapolate as much as information and value out of it.
Next level.
That's powerful. One thing you brought up was DVDs and CDs. I don't
DVDs,
know. Fun fact. The young generation watching this won't know, but once upon a time, I used to work at this place called a video store where I would help people rent DVDs and VHS and CDs. Those things aren't very around today. They're
No, no, yeah.
they're a dying
Blockbuster, when
business.
they went down, everyone followed suit.
Damn, that is crazy, man. That is crazy. So you said life is sales. You're either selling or you're failing. Can you unpack that for us?
I think, obviously everything in life that we do requires us, again, going back to communication, personal relationships, but also influence is part of life, right? Leaders influencers. They influence ideas, thoughts, emotions. They persuade people on what's possible and how they can contribute more of themselves, right? And that can be applied to, obviously, you selling a coaching program, you selling your kids to make a bed, you selling your spouse or future spouse to actually become your spouse. So it's a big word, ubiquitous, but it's ever present, right?
Yeah.
And if you know how to use it, and if you are wired like that, that's life. Either you sell or you are sold.
Sell or be sold.
I mean, that's GC, and then I do believe that he speaks the truth there, right? Because, you either buy into certain things or you're selling certain things. And obviously, it's not so black and white. You can call it as you want. And that's the thing with sales. It has a bad connotation to it because when you tell someone I'm a salesperson, and like people think, oh my gosh, a sleazy salesperson, because there's few individuals in the past, they try to use certain techniques to actually get people do things that they don't want to. But sales is the most profound thing ever because nothing in this world happens without it being sold first.
That's right.
The ideas, the investment, what is investing, right? Selling someone an idea, what's possible for them to put money down, right? If you don't have salespeople, the economy, the world would stop. And then that's just as something as a salespeople and business people. But again, day to day, we use salesmanship to get our way, right? To get our ideas across, the point across, presentations across, and to make sure that when we effectively communicate, we sell.
That's right.
If you are talking to your friend, you're like, listen, I was at the best restaurant. I mean, the food was so great, and you described it to the detail. I mean, they know the bread was so warm and tasty, the butter and the juicy steak or the vegetable so crispy. That's salesmanship at the end of the day, right?
That's when people told me, that's when I got the idea to get into sales because I was always great at influencing people to make decisions outside of sales before I even knew this was a thing.
Yeah.
People were always like, bro, you always make me want to go here, or you always make me want to eat this food, or you make me want to go to this restaurant, you make me want to go on this vacation. Whatever it was, I realized like I had a power of influence.
Yes.
And that's when I was like, man, maybe I can use that for something, greater than me. Has Albert ever had any limiting beliefs that maybe at some point in your sales career kept you playing small? And if you did, like, how did you smash through it?
I mean, all the time you have certain things that you struggle with and fight through it, but you have to be reminded. And I think, if life is worth living, it's worth recording too. So it's like I even have on my phone OneNote, the app where I have my goals that I was doing on a daily basis, weekly, yearly basis, my, tenets and rules and axioms and quotes. And whenever I would feel a little bit uncertain about things, I would look through that, right? And I would be reminded of my commitments, of what I'm trying to achieve, of what other people said. And sometimes, and actually now thinking about it, because I haven't done it, actively for a while, and I read that in the book as well. I think it was Napoleon Hill. It's like you would have with these, bless you, mentors and idols that you follow, having a mental conversation with them. What would they do? What would they advise you when you're like, I feel a bit down. I believe this or that.
Oh, so powerful, man. That is so freaking powerful.
So, yeah, I mean, we all have these things and, it's like nothing is really set, but it's like, I mean, and we've heard this obviously in the last few days, is like, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall back to the highest level of preparation.
Oh, bro, I don't know. I don't know if this board can handle what's happening here today. Jeez Louise, Albert, this is next level stuff, man. There's a few more things I really want to cover for you, dude. You talk a lot about staying sharp mentally and physically. You're embodying it right now in front of me.
I'm all right.
Yeah. Why do you think looking good affects closing ability?
I think, because it clears your mind on other things, right? And it's like, I learned this early in sales: look good, feel good, sell good, right?
Mm,
Obviously, you want to dress your best for the occasion. You want to feel good, right? But if you're not healthy, if you're not strong, if you don't feel powerful, if your energy is low, that's going to show up.
that's right.
Right?
That's
So
right.
so emotions follows the motions. So if you are strong and powerful, you achieve something in your day, you lift heavy or run or whatever that is, it opens you up again, stacking wins, and then you show more in power. You show up in a sales call with more power. But another thing is as well, if you have to worry about your health, if you are slow, sluggish, or a little bit overweight, or you have health concerns, your focus goes there. And even though you are really, I know people that are really, really good at sales, but they don't take care of themselves well. At some point or another, they will have to divide their focus between taking care of themselves and being the best in the field that they can
Yeah.
be, right? So then that divided attention
Yeah.
is really, really not conducive, right? But if you have this as something that is part of your daily ritual, I do believe that I'm a better salesperson just because I feel better, I'm stronger, and I have a high level of energy and vitality.
I freaking love it. I couldn't agree more, man. I couldn't agree more. That's what you guys need to be hearing right now, man. The real raw truth, and Albert's bringing it for you. One thing I want to get into, if you're okay talking about it, you lost your mom last year, I believe. My condolences. And you said sales kept you going.
Yes.
How do you channel pain into purpose?
Well, for me, I got into like an apathy. I mean, obviously, I've never met my father.
Oh, wow.
Right. My mom was everything.
Wow.
Right.
I get it now.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
I didn't
then-
know that.
Yeah. And then I spent a lot of years, traveling around the world doing what I was doing, right? And she did whatever she could for me to have the best life possible. And she struggled in life
Sure.
a lot as well. And then when she passed, that was really tough. Right? And then it was tough. But having that calendar and like I had to keep my composure. I have to, because sales is transfer of emotions, transfer of certainty, clarity, conviction, courage, sympathy, empathy.
That's right.
And you need to be able to transfer that, but you can't transfer what you don't have. You need to also be master of obviously your own state to be able to communicate effectively, right? So that actually kept me going because I was an emotional basket case. I was really it cut deep, and even especially today, it hurts. But that kept me focused. And even though I was not going full guns blazing with full zest and gusto as I could, it kept me on the line, if you
Yeah.
right? Because I took a call day after, but I realized
And you said you closed that call, I believe.
it was a close,
Which is
deal.
unbelievable because everything you're talking about, how your energy, you're this, you're that, you still showed up a certain way on that call and you put everything that was going on in your personal life aside, it sounds like.
No, yeah, because I was rearranging all the calls because I couldn't take it, but this call somehow was still on the calendar. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take it. And it was also exercise for me to get
Keep my
myself
mind off.
and also to see whether or not will I'll be able to do this, how it's going to affect me, because I wanted to have a litmus test as well. And it was difficult because we were talking about certain possibilities of, obviously a situation in the future, and it reminded me of the future of my mom and all that stuff. But I kept my composure, closed the sale, and I was really grateful for that, because you're like, okay, I can still do this. Obviously, I took some time off to do all that I needed to do, but when I was getting back into it, that was keeping me on the line, keeping my mind away from all the stuff, because I mean, most people have felt pain in one way or another of someone passing close to them, and it's like it's mind consuming,
Yeah.
right? And it's like endless loops of stuff, and then actually breaking free from that does help, especially when you have to show up for someone else,
That's right.
because you're doing them a disservice. I need to help them, and I'm a basket that does not help, right? So it did truly help me. Obviously, I was not at my best, but actually I was good enough to make sure that I get myself back.
And the composure, right? You said, first of all, I'd shout out to you because that's not an easy thing to do with the death of your mother, right? Probably the closest person.
Yeah,
One
absolutely.
of the
Family-wise, for sure.
One of the closest people. Yeah, if not the closest.
I mean, wife and
Yeah.
mom and my wife.
Yeah.
That's the
And
sister.
you know, it's crazy. I'm glad. I appreciate you sharing that because there's so many closers that I hear today that are dealing with just day-to-day stuff that comes up that they can't have emotional control over, right? For small little things in life. I'm having a bad day. Oh, this person said this, or you know, this little thing happened and it's all of a sudden taking over my entire day. And they have a hard time being able to put that baggage to the side and be able to stay focused. You said, how can I help someone else? Right? I think how did you word it? You said, if I'm not, you man, I don't know exactly what you said, but you said something along the line like, if I can't help myself, or how am I going to help somebody else?
I'm supposed to be there to help them. How I'm going to help them? Because if I need help there,
That's
in
right.
that
That's
moment,
exactly it, man. So that composure, I think, is so important. And I appreciate you sharing that, just because I think there's a lot of people out there, especially on some of the teams that I'm part of, where like little things happen every day. I always say like every problem in life has a solution except one. And I learned this from a doctor client of mine back when I used to be in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a house that we were looking to buy off market. As you know what real estate wholesaling is?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was at a house. We were looking to buy
Assignment
this. Yes, buy a wholesale deal for a builder I used to work for, a contractor builder, and he was looking to buy it for himself and build it. And I was kind of his protege at the time, learning. And it was an older gentleman, maybe 90 years old. And all of a sudden, he started like almost fainting. And luckily, I had the head of Glendale Adventist Emergency Hospital with me. He was the client that was looking to buy this.
Fortuitous, right?
Yeah, right. And so as we're calling 911, the doctor is asking, you know, the 9-year-old older man, like, what kind of medication are you taking, X, Y, and Z, you know, until the ambulance comes. And this doctor, the ambulance came, they're checking him out, everything. He's like, you know, one thing that I learned about life, Mike? And I was like, what is that, Dr. Cardillo? Because he's in the emergency room all the time. He's dealing with stab wounds, gunshots, overdoses.
Right now, help immediately.
Accidents.
Right.
Everything and anything. You never know what's walking into that emergency
Yeah.
room. He's like, you know what I realized about life, Mike? I said, what is that, Dr. Cardillo? He's like, I realized every single problem in life has a solution, unfortunately, except one. I said, what is that? He said, the death of a family member, a friend, a loved one, a father, a mother, a brother, a sister. That's the only problem in life that we can solve is the passing of someone. He's like, every other problem that you want to solve in life has a solution if you put your mind to it.
Absolutely.
And I was like, man, that stuck with me till today. And it's like, even dealing with the things you were doing, it's like, hey, man, like, I understand, like, that's the one thing you can solve, right? But there's so many people that I see. What I'm trying to say is they're dealing with the stuff that has solutions that isn't as big.
But what are you going to do with it? That's what you can control.
Exactly. I'll just leave it there, man. But I appreciate you sharing that.
And thank you for saying that. And I do believe that the quality of our lives the quality of the life is determined by the quality of problems that we can solve, right? And you know, no one actually, the problems, they stop when you die.
That's right.
So everyone that is successful on all the higher levels that we can think of in any way of life, right? Whether that be emotional, personal, financial, what have you, they are just equipped to deal with higher quality of problems.
Mm-hmm.
But they have problems.
That's right.
Nonetheless.
That's right.
Whatever that is.
Life is all about problems, man. Solving
it's
problems.
About solving them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
about
right.
solving them, right?
That's right. Man, a couple more things before we wrap this up, man. I appreciate you for coming out here all the way from Croatia, baby.
Yeah,
in the house, in the building, dropping gems, dropping freaking gongs. This is crazy.
Might as well.
This is really good stuff, man. I appreciate you coming on here. This wasn't even planned. It was just last minute. But for our listener out, and I mean, there's so much you dropped today where, honest to God, you can go watch this episode 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times and still have something to take away. At least for me, I could definitely go back. And a lot of it's just reminders of stuff you need to continue being reminded of and hearing, especially if you're in the sales business. I would recommend you watching this episode over and over and over again. I'm not just bullshitting and saying that. I'm dead freaking serious when I'm saying that. But for our listener out there who's feeling like they're stuck or they're, just being average right now, right? You mentioned you got to get uncomfortable, right? What's the first uncomfortable thing that someone should do to shift gears and start winning?
Well, first, obviously, they have to decide, right?
Make the decision, baby.
Cut away, right? Idea, right? Decide, cut away any possibility of losing and not being successful at this. And then I think that really, the OGs, the most successful people, they're not really so sophisticated and so much better at complicated things. They do basics better, right? Like Kobe Bryant, his 800 shots. This is like he had to do the 800 shots. I think if a salesperson wants to get better, he just needs to get better at basics. I have 4 basic tools that I think are profound. And if we try and strive to get better at these tools every single day and we practice them, I think it's going to elevate doesn't matter if you're an expert salesperson or if you're just a novice. Those 4 tools, if you practice them, drill, rehearse, and strive to be better, I think it will be beneficial for all the listeners. First is rapport. You need to really be good at rapport building, right? You don't need to have any fancy words, fancy skills, know the syntax and all that stuff. It's just how do you connect with people, having that emotional resonance with people, right? You can build rapport through different ways, right? Paying a compliment, through a smile, talk about commonalities. I think asking questions is a great rapport building tool because it shows that if you can ask a proper question, it shows that you care. People obviously want to know that you care for their goals because they're going to allow you to influence them. But also active listening. Being really good at active listening does really help. And I think that's one of the most powerful rapport building tool because if a person feels that you're trying to understand their unique point of view and they feel understood, and if you have the ability to articulate their point of view even better than they can do themselves, you have a winner there. You have a very, very strong rapport. Second, and close second, I do believe, is questions. And I put it close second just because if you don't have rapport and you ask an invasive or a little bit more intimate question, they will not answer it truthfully or they're not going to answer it at all. But questions are tremendously important because if we get great at asking questions, we uncover needs, wants, wounds, past experiences, money, the authority. We uncover values and we can align with those values and show them making a decision when buying our product is consistent with those values. We also uncover objections, which we all dread.
Yes.
We can actually squash objections beforehand. So, questions are tremendously important. And I think, very close second. Third, I think it is the congruency, if you will, meaning verbal, nonverbal has to match, right? Sometimes people say things that are on the script that are like, I'm just going to say it and go through the motions, but they don't have the body language and tonality that actually matches that. You get someone on the call, they're like, this is my last thing that I need to do or else, and they're all scared and like, I gotta figure this out. And then a salesperson would say, I'm sorry to hear that. There's a dissonance, right?
Yeah.
So actually having that congruency does help. And then the fourth thing, I think is, and we mentioned this as well, state management. Because at the end of the day, sales is transfer emotion, clarity, conviction, certainty, sympathy, empathy. So we have to have that ability to manage our state so we can transfer it. We talked about it, obviously, with me having those emotional challenges when my mother passed. But also, how do you deal with daily disappointments? How do you deal with, wife not listening to you, kids are doing this, not closing a deal, going through a call for 2 hours and not closing a deal for one reason or another? If you show up with that emotion on the next call, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So obviously having that state management is tremendously important. And what I do believe when you ask the question, what they should do is just focus on the basics, one foot in front of another, commit to it, and just do the reps. At the end of the day, it's all the reps, the 800 shots, the Kobe Bryant analogy. That's it. You do the reps, you get better, you get stronger, and you get more comfortable with it.
Damn. Albert, dropping gems, man. Dropping just gems on gems. So much wisdom in what you're saying. How long, you've been in sales?
A minute.
Yeah, a minute. But dude, anyone that's in sales, there's so much in here that we're talking about that's life-changing. It's transformational. Is there anything that we haven't chatted about today that you want to leave our listener with?
If you struggle, there's a gap, you need to close the gap. That's it. If you are thinking, of doing the remote closing, that is something that anyone can benefit from. Because I've seen people that are doing this part time, but if you commit to it full time, people have really, really great lives that they created for themselves, and there's money to be made. And the beautiful thing about this as well, about this industry, is it's in its infancy, right? It's still, it's just starting where they're going to go. So if you're here right now, in 10 years, you're going to be one of those OGs, and you're going to be able to you have your pick of the litter, if you will.
Speaking of money to be made, before we wrap this up, what's Albert's best cash collected month been, or commission month been? Anything you want to share around what's that been for you? Now having the ability to work remotely, being able to control your schedule, work from where you want, when you want, dictate your own schedule. How's that been like as far as finances?
So, and I got to be honest, I had, in the past, I had my biggest month ever that I did it was $80,000 a month as a salesperson.
Okay.
Right? So, which is really good, right? Biggest month over here with 1cc was over 15, right? It's great money. And like I said, it's in its infancy, and then there's no cap.
Yeah.
Right? There are guys making 50 grand a month in this organization. And it's
met a few of them the last couple of days.
Right. It's all about closing the gap. What are they doing? What you got to do?
Yeah.
Right? Closing the gap. So absolutely. I mean, there's money to be made, and it's about, doing the work and being the best that you can be to actually achieve that. And the beautiful thing about it, you don't have to be that top guy. You don't have to be number 1 or 2 to make freaking good money.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's the beautiful thing about it, because there are some industries that are like, okay, you go into this, you're like, oh, they're making this or that, but there's like 2 of them making money, the rest are doing nothing, right? They're barely scrapping by. So there's still there's a lot of people actually making good money, and they don't have to be like the best of the best, right? That's precisely, and I think that it actually boils down to the training, to the support, through obviously the managers and people that are behind the stage, making sure that everything is copacetic.
How's that experience been like for you at One Call Closers?
Absolutely, very, very great, right? Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of organization. I was a part of a lot of sales training in my life as well, and I can say, top marks, best people in the industry for sure, and the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day.
Who's your favorite coach? No.
Put me on the spot, right?
No, you don't have to answer that one. Oh, man, that's awesome. Albert, you're a freaking class act. Honestly, I'm inspired to get back on the phones right now, dude. I'm like, dude, if I could get on a sales call right now, I want to pick up the phone and just make it happen. But honestly, what I realized is, dude, you are the true definition of a sales professional. How sales should be done the proper way, the right way, right? The non-sleazy car salesman, that connotation that's attached to it, way, man, really understanding people, really delivering value. I think everything you talked about today is really profound. It's necessary. It's just needed. It's just needed. So guys, again, if I was you, save this freaking episode. Go back and watch this one over and over again, because there's just too many freaking gems in here. Albert, thanks for coming down all the way from Croatia, brother. This was awesome. Thank you for having me. I just love the fact we just planned this literally yesterday on the whim. And I can't believe that there was a chance this episode could have not happened, which is shocking to me.
Yes.
So
I'm really grateful that I was invited, and I hope this is going to be a valuable experience.
I think it's life-changing, to be honest with you, man. Brother, thank you so much for coming out here, making it happen. I really appreciate you, and I can't wait to continue seeing your success here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's do it.